In today's strategy segment for coinpoker.com, we are taking a look at a very interesting spot from 50, 100, no limit Texas Hold'em. In this hand, Prodigy, playing about 100 big blinds deep, raises it up to 2 big blinds with pocket queens, 2.1 big blinds to be exact. This is a spot where a lot of people think they should raise big with their pocket queens to try to get people to fold or to try to extract value. But no. You want to simply be making a raise, a normal size raise that you would do with all of your range. And it turns out a minimum raise is very often ideal in cash games, especially if you want to be able to play a slightly wider range before the flop. As you raise bigger and bigger, you essentially have to play tighter and tighter because you're risking more to win the blinds. And as you're risking more, you have to show up with a stronger range to begin with. But by raising small, you get to raise a wider range, which is exactly what Prodigy does. Do not think in your games you need to be raising to 7 big blinds before the flop. It's not a good play. So Queens raises it up. And light with Ace King, and the cutoff should definitely 3-bet to about 3 to 3.5 times the initial raise. And light does go to 700. Again, playing 100 big blinds deep. This is 7 big blinds. Now, back around to pocket queens. Take a second. Think about what you would do in this spot. This is a situation where the only good option is to 4-bet. You may say, but I could be beat. I could be against aces or kings, and I'm going to get stacked. Well, welcome to the real world. When you have queens and you run into aces or kings, you should be getting stacked for the most part. So I would expect a 4-bet to come from Prodigy, probably about 3x the last 3-bet. So notice in this scenario, and light goes to 700, Prodigy goes to 2,000, leaving 8,000 behind, a pretty good amount. By using this size, Prodigy can mix in some bluffs with hands like primarily Ace-X suited, maybe some King-X suited. It turns out really good 4-bet bluffing hands block your opponent from having a hand that can easily call. And it turns out an ace or a king are the most relevant blockers. So using suited ones, so that you have a little bit more playability post-flop, is usually going to be ideal for bluffing. In this scenario, aces, kings, queens definitely can put in the 4-bet, ace-king as well. Now back to in light with the ace-king. Should ace-king just rip it all in, or does it ever call? Well, I think for the most part, ace-king probably just wants to be all in this spot. There are some times where that may not be the case, though. If you think Prodigy's range contains a whole lot of ace-X, maybe they take every ace 5, 4, 3, 2 suited and bluff them, maybe even some king-8 and king-7 suited, and they bluff them, well, you really want to keep those hands in the pot because ace-king is absolutely crushing those hands, and if you do go all in, they will simply fold. Alternatively, if you think Prodigy's 4-betting range is literally aces, kings, queens, and ace-king, you actually don't want to get it in against that range because against ace, king, and queens, you're roughly chopping, but against aces and kings, which is not going to happen all that often, but against aces and kings, you're in very bad shape. So if your opponent's overly loose, overly crazy, calling could be very good because you want to keep them in with their bluffs. If they're overly nitty, you can't really go around folding the ace-king, but you do want to proceed with caution. You also may want to mix it up in GTO world every once in a while and just call 2. So ace-king this time does call. We head to the flop. It comes 10, 4, 4. 2 spades. Ace-king has the ace of spades. Queens has the queen of spades. Prodigy should go for a small continuation bet. In this situation, most of the time, pot's 4,150. Prodigy goes 1,867, which seems fine and reasonable to me. A mistake a lot of people make in this spot is they blast it. They bet something like 4,000 for pot, or they even just rip it all in for 2x pot, thinking, I probably have the best hand. If you got me beat, you got me beat. That is bad logic. In this scenario, you want to give your opponent every possible opportunity to stick around with any sort of backdoor draws they have, like ace-5 of hearts, ace-3 of hearts, ace-2 of hearts, king-queen of hearts, stuff like that. Any of these hands that may opt to 3-bet and call a 4-bet, you really want to let them stick around. Also, you still get to build the pot against pocket pairs, which are never going to fold, and you will get a hand like ace-king to float. And at this point, ace-king is not in especially good shape. With this ace-king in the scenario, calling is the only viable option. Perhaps you could raise and get it in if you think Prodigy's range is overly loose to the point that you're not going to be able to continue that well on a lot of turns with the ace-king if you fail to improve. But also, you can just make your opponent either fold out or stick around with hands like king-7 of hearts, right, that are in terrible shape. So there may be some merit in just playing a big pot immediately, but I think calling the ace king is definitely going to be right because that forces Prodigy to stay in the pot with all those hands that you're not really trying to fold against. Turn to 3 of hearts. Pot is 7,885. In GTO world, Prodigy should simply go all in. And that may seem obvious. You may say, is this even a hand? How are we even talking about this hand? It went raise, 3-bet, 4-bet, queens against ace king, rip it in, easy game. Well, actually, it's a pretty interesting scenario because take a look at what Prodigy does. Instead of just going all in for 6/7 pot, Prodigy bets half of his stack, or a little bit more than half his stack. He has 6,282 in his stack, and he bets 3,548. Cool spot. In this scenario, if Prodigy simply went all in, Enlight should let the ace king go with no more backdoor equity. But against this bet size, it starts to become a little bit tempting. Maybe Enlight levels himself into thinking Prodigy is just getting crazy with some total nonsense. I don't even know, ace 6 of diamonds and just going absolutely bonkers. And is trying to make a bluff that looks all in, but he gets to save $3,000 when it fails. These abnormal bet sizes often lead your opponent into potentially leveling themselves and making some sort of blunder. So the question becomes, what sort of blunder could ace king make in this spot? Well, if Prodigy's range is actually only strong value hands, ace king should just fold. It's annoying, but you're not quite getting the right price to draw. And if you shove, you're going to get called every time and you're just going to get torched. So that's good. If ace king calls, again, not getting quite the right price, it's not a good scenario. And by the time you get to the river, you probably have to call off on the river anyway, because then you'll be getting really good odds to call on the river, and you do beat some sporadic bluffs, so maybe ace king has to call. So it's tough to know what exactly is happening in this spot when you're analyzing it away from the table. Some people may look at this and say, oh man, it's a terrible bet because it's not GTO. But that is absolutely not how poker works, even at the highest stakes. You always want to make a point to figure out, what is my opponent likely to do wrong? And if I had to give a general, broad, blanket statement about what high stakes online cash game players do quote unquote wrong, they often find aggressive bluffs / value bets. And by making this bet size, I do think Enlight may deviate away from simply folding and may put the money in some chunk of the time. And that would, of course, be a disaster. Pocket queens at that point would then gobble it up because pocket queens are essentially the nuts. And this time, it turns out Enlight actually does rip it all in. You may say, does going all in have any merit? Well, if you think Prodigy's range to bet this size contains lots of value hands, aces, kings, which you block, queens, maybe jacks, maybe like weird ace 10 suited, I don't even know, or draws, by going all in, you force the draws to call. Because right now, imagine Prodigy did have any sort of flush draw. Prodigy has to call it off, right? But if Prodigy did have a hand like ace 5 of hearts and they bet the turn and get called, on the river, they only have whatever it was, 3,000 remaining to bluff into a pot that will be 20, and Light's going to call with the ace king. So by shoving now, you get all the money in against the draws, whereas if you just call, the draws don't have to bluff the river. This is a spot where Prodigy could bet the ace 5 of hearts on the turn, and then just simply check fold the river if he fails to improve and save $2,800. So I get why this shove may have some merit, and if Prodigy's range is actually very balanced with good, strong made hands and draws, ace king's probably okay. It's not loving it, but it's okay. But Prodigy's range may only be value. And if it's only value, Enlight's going to get crushed by ripping it in the spot. Leveling wars are fun. They're exciting. They are difficult. What I recommend, in general, against good, strong players is to simply play good, strong GTO poker. But if you're one of the best players in the world and you have good information about how your particular opponent plays, you can get well out of line and crush them. And this is especially true in your games. In your games, where you can very often look at your opponents and see clearly that they are really excited and are probably going to run a bluff, or maybe they are really excited they probably have a good strong made hand, or maybe they're just weak and passive and you can drastically over bluff. The way you crush players who have clear flaws in their strategy that you're aware of and they are not, is to maximally exploit them. Do not think you should automatically follow a solver. Looking at the GTO solver is important to know the baseline strategy, but as you know more and more about your opponents, you can get well out of line and take advantage of all the little mistakes that they make, and sometimes the very huge mistakes they make. Imagine in this spot, if Prodigy somehow knew, which he probably doesn't, but if he knew Enlight would always rip it all in over a small bet, because Enlight thinks small bets are very bluff heavy. Clearly just do this with value hands, get the shove, call it off, and be way ahead. It's hard to know that kind of thing, but if you do, you can win a ton. Before we wrap it up today, I want to know one thing you have done recently in your poker game that has resulted in you massively exploiting either the player pool of players you play against, because a lot of players play kind of the same, or a particular opponent. Let me know in the comments section down below. I love reading all of your comments and all of your stories about things that you are doing to crush your opponents, so leave that down there for me. Good luck in your games. Have fun. I hope all of your exploits work amazingly well.